lovable child, I'm simply wild. Love is a stranger to me. Too many trips to your sweet lips, looks just like danger to me. With each kiss, I'm carrying a lot. What is this great power you've got? Kiss by kiss, I'm falling in love with you.
It wasn't long before Joe and Ann found themselves married. She was born in Eaglesham, a small town just outside Glasgow, where she lived with her brothers and sisters and her parents. Now, she was born on November the 18th, 1921, to Margaret Harper and John Connolly, although she kept the name Harper because her mother eventually divorced John Connolly and married Neil Murray. But the first marriage resulted in the 4 children. Was Peter, who lives in the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland, Johnny, who went to Australia, and Maggie and Lottie. And when she married Neil Murray, they had more children. There was Emily, Neil, Anne, Kate, and Mary. These scenes are taken in Jamaica Street, Glasgow, around the time shortly before she was born. Shows you the street life that was quite different from today. The family was very poor. The boys went around Glasgow with a cart trading rags for Delft, Delft being a form of China that was imported, which they would trade for rags, which they would sell for what little money they could get. Their father was well known in the area as being a great man around animals. He raised pit bulls and pigeons. There's actually a story about him that one of his prize pigeons got eaten by a pit bull one time, and his father became enraged and actually cut the dog open and removed the pigeon and threw the dog out in the garbage heap, and then eventually relented and went out and sewed him back up, and the dog was fine, but never touched another pigeon. Neil eventually learned the art of repairing radios and televisions from Joe after Joe had come to Scotland, and continued that enterprise until he passed away. Pretty much followed that for all of his life. Mom did tell me at one point that her mother had died as a result of malnutrition due to the starvation that they were suffering from the Depression. She died rather early, and most of our family never really knew or had any contact with our grandparents. We really never knew them. This is Inverleith Street as it is today. Of course, the old tenements are gone, but the street still remains. It's a good picture of Anne and her sisters and brother. Actually, Anne's not in there. It's just mostly her brothers and sisters. That's Peter on the right. My mother had come to Donegal in 1945 with 2 small children, Margaret and Richard, her firstborn. There she gave birth to me on Christmas Eve, alone and unaided. My father was seen as a traitor by the locals. He joined the RAF to fight World War II. The local people refused her any help or comfort. They even locked the well that was her only source of water. She had to walk 15 miles of railway track to enter Ulster to buy any necessities. Most of the time, the border guards would confiscate her meager possessions and just throw them on the ground. Many times she returned home to Tornabrathley with nothing. There was no light, water. The only warmth and source of light was from a fireplace that burnt peat.
I just dropped into SeaWorld.
The only source of food was an Irish woman who had lived in America and had returned to Donegal to retire.
I want to hear how you're getting on. I want
Dad
to
did
see
return from time to time on leave and brought what he could.
I'm happy to be back again and greet you big and small.
My mom's mother visited her one time from Scotland. She was absolutely appalled by what she saw. She tried to convince my mother to return to Scotland with her. But my mother, being the proud woman that she was, refused. And my grandmother had to go home by herself.
Standing by the door. The kettle boiling on the house as I walk up the floor.
Then one day, the Garda showed up at the door.
And then to see a welcome free.
The Garda are the
for
police
travelers
of the Irish Republic.
For your hearts are like your mountains.
They searched the house.
Donegal.
They interrogated her.
I like to stay
Then they claimed to have found
with you
a bullet somewhere in the house.
With fairy lore and tales of yore beside the torchlight. And then to see
They informed her that she would have to leave Donegal, as it was illegal to possess arms or ammunition. They threatened to arrest her. They informed her that she had to leave immediately. And if her or her husband were ever seen in the area again, they would be arrested and jailed as subversives. She gathered up her children, what few meager possessions she could carry, and and set out to walk the 15 miles of railway track back to Northern Ireland.
When I'm traveling far away,
She never returned.
the friendship I recall.
And I never returned to see the place of my birth. Went home to Scotland. It's a disgrace that in such a beautiful country the hatred runs so deep.
Right along, Donegal. Right along, Donegal.
This is a picture of my grandmother, Margaret Murray, as she appeared in those days. It's the only known picture that exists of her. This is a picture of Joe as he appeared in those days, wearing his Air Force uniform. And Anne, my mother, holding her firstborn, and the two children she brought with her to Torna Bradley, Richard and Margaret. Joe and Ann arrived in Ashford in about 1946 and moved into this house in Willsboro, Ashford, Kent. He had got a job as a serviceman for Sobel Radio and Television and traveled the countryside repairing televisions. This is a collage of memories of sights and sounds that we had seen when we were children. Growing up in Ashford was a very happy time for us.
Andy Pandy's coming to play, la 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 la. Andy Pandy's here today, la 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 la. Andy Pandy's somewhere in the garden today. Let's go and find him, shall we? There he is, on his swing. Hello, Andy Pandy. Oh, look, children. He's waving with his feet. That's because he's holding on so tightly with his hands. Do you remember his swing, children? Some of you have seen it before, haven't you?
Who could forget that program? We used to gather around the television and watch it when we were children. We were entranced by it.
But how were we to get there without a motor car? Well, Barney here beyond the chill, I tell you what we'll do. The special they are plentiful and the IRA for you. We'll wire on Houston Order, and before we'll get that far, we'll give the boys a bloody good ride in Johnson's motor car. When Dr. Johnson got the news, he soon put on his shoes. He said this is an urgent case and there is no time to lose. He then put on his castor hat and upon his breast a star. You could hear the tin going through Glenfin of Johnson's motor car. Well, when he got to the Reeling Bridge, the rebels he saw there, he knew the game was up with him, for at him they did stare. He said, I have a permit to travel near and far. You can stick your English permit, we want your motor car. What will my loyal brethren say whene'er they hear the news? My car, it has been commandeered by the rebels at Dunluce. We'll give you a receipt for it, all signed by Captain Marr. And when Ireland gets her freedom, you'll get your motor car. They set the car in motion and filled it to the brim. With rifles and with bayonets, this made old Johnson grim. And Barney hoisted the Sinn Féin flag and it fluttered like a star. And they gave 3 cheers for the IRA and Johnson's motor car.
This is where we went to church, St. Teresa of Avila. A lot of us had our Holy Communion. This is the inside of that church. I remember it well. Maybe you'll remember this. You have to ask yourself, what were they smoking when they made this?